You mentioned the concerns of arranged marriage, and just to go back to it, sometimes youngsters can have a justifiable aversion to it. And I would say the justifiable aversion is purely because of the misconceptions that they see amongst them, which is why it becomes a forced marriage if there has been no consultation, if the marriage has been done for economic reasons, as a one-way ticket to the West, if it's been to maintain some family heirloom or some family legacies, if there are varying reasons that are not righteous in their first instance, they are not for the sanctity of those two individuals, there are some third or fourth reason, it's no wonder that youngsters will turn around and say, well, this system of arranged marriage is not a good system, because the examples that they see are far from pious and they're far from righteous. And we can't deny the fact that that exists.
We're just going to take a short break now. But join us after the break, where we'll be discussing some more of these issues. You know, how do you find the right person, and how do you actually deal with some of the family pressures that come into it as well within arranged marriage? So join us, we're going to be back after this short break.
वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त मैं ना आता तो कोई और ही आया होता मैं ना आता तो कोई और ही आया होता जिंदाबाद जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद
Welcome back. Today we're discussing marriage, and earlier on in the program we were looking at the Islamic concept of marriage. So if you've decided you want to get married, you know, how do you find that right person, and when's the right age to get married? That's what we'll be discussing in this part of the program. As Zanif Saab, let me come to you first. When do you think is the right age to get married?
The age will depend somewhat on the societies. Right. They can never be in a universal religion. Such a hard and fast rule that, okay, at 23 everybody, men, you're going to sign up, and women 20, you're going to sign in. That is not how these things work. There must be a balance and some flexibility, but keeping in view, as far as I can see, some basic facts. Number one, women tend to mature faster than men. Men may not want to admit that, but yes, it's the fact. If you look at it, girls are reaching the point where they're ready to marry mentally, emotionally, spiritually, prior to a man. So the ages of girls in marriage should be somewhat younger in societies than the ages of men. Secondly, their biological clock. They have to produce children, and science has shown that the earlier they do that, the better for that child, for that mother. I'm married, I know. The younger my wife was, the healthier our children were as well. It happens. And lastly, there are some standards you can look at in Islam that our Khulafa have been recommending for both sexes, men and women, to marry as young as possible, because the flexibility of a couple is in earlier young ages. You know, it's just a natural ability to compromise and to get along with someone else. As you get older, you get kind of fixed in your ways and set in your ways, and it creates its own little struggles. I was touching that
earlier on, that if you marry earlier, then you can actually grow and develop, you know, with that person. Yes. So what kind of guidance does Islam give us in finding a partner?
Well, first of all, I have to refer to a hadith narrated by Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he has said, "Tunkahul mar'atu li arba'in li maliha wa li hasbiha wa li jamaliha wa li diniha fasfur bi zati dini taribat yadaka." If I can, you help me out if I lose my word in some place. A girl is chosen as a bride on the basis of four things. Sometimes a groom is having her family into consideration, and then sometimes it is the wealth she holds, and sometimes it is the beauty she contains. But some of the intelligent boys, they go for the piety and the religious background of the lady, and this is the true secret of your success according to Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the correct way of pinpointing your partner for lifelong. And if I come to this point, when we are young, you are having a colorful life, a life full of dreams to be fulfilled. But the experience shows that these things do not last long. The beauty and the colors and all the attractions, physical ones, and he was mentioning the bumpy hormones always jumping. These are to be contained, as I mentioned earlier. The regulations all are to make our life healthier, better, happier. So you have to pinpoint on piety and religious background of the lady if you want to make a good choice.
Okay. So, I mean, what happens if your parents do decide on someone and you don't like them? You have a genuine excuse. How do you balance that out with your parents? Because obviously you have to respect your parents' decision. But how do you balance that?
I hope the relationship with the youngster and his parents or her parents is so relaxed and free and genuinely father to son that you can openly express your desires and your concerns to your parents. And ideally, a parent, I would hope, although my children are very young, a parent would be able to read into his son as to what his ideals are, what his concerns are. And I would also hope that no parent would want to throw their child into a sort of pit of fire. Admittedly, that does happen when things are not properly discussed and properly engaged with.
Okay, but I mean, as a sub, there's an age difference between you and your parents. I mean, how can you always relate to your parents? Sometimes it's a bit odd to think that your parents are going to be finding someone for you, and other people say that, you know, your parents know you the best, but I mean, is that actually true?
I'm glad you worded the question like this, that as a sub, there's an age difference between you and your parents, as if you're talking to me, but I know it's hypothetical.
Right.
But the reality was this also true. Yeah. There's a huge gap of generation between myself and my parents. I am the product of an arranged marriage. Not just in America, I arranged my marriage from America into Pakistan. And at a time when, going back a number of years, I'll reveal my age if I do that, and they'll discredit me as a source to discuss things with them, so I won't go that far. But I will say that, yes, there were a number of questions that would come into my mind. Well, how can I truly believe that my parents can know the right woman for me? They cannot. They can only give their best judgment. Right. And as was suggested, that you must trust that that's exactly what they're going to do if you have a good relationship with your parents. And thereby you accept their decision, thinking they're doing it in your best interest. However, if somehow that breaks down, and we know, let's be realistic again, let's talk real here. It is not always the case where a parent has a healthy relationship with their parent, with their child.
Yeah, let's be honest.
And the children they struggle with this, you know, especially in Asian culture, and not so much in Western culture, because we've been learning in Western culture to question and to not just complain, but you know, to kind of bring out our points of views with our parents. But in Asian culture, it's like, be quiet, just take it. Take your lumps for 40 years if you have to, but just take your lumps. Now, there's one out for all of us in this community by Allah's grace. We have a Khalifa who is above our parents in a sense. He's our spiritual and moral guide, and we can always consult with him that, look, I'm in a bind here. I love my parents, I want to respect them. I have all this pressure on me, but I don't know what to do. I can't accept this. I don't want to live this life. It will not be true to who I am. And yet I can't reject my parents. And see how he will perhaps consult or advise the parents, and in this case, you are not making a good decision for your child. And that could be a good way to help.
All right, let's move to the audience. I mean, for those of you who have had an arranged marriage here, what kind of role did your family play in that? Were the parents a bit pushy or clean?
I think that just following up on Azizab's point here about trusting parents and so on. I mean, we know Holy Prophet ﷺ arranged marriages, and one of the marriages that he arranged was Hazrat Zainab and Hazrat Zaid, who was his adopted son, and the marriage ended in divorce. So one, I mean, you trust, but there are things that can go wrong, and it's not the biggest deal in the world. That's why divorce is permissible. The point is to give a good go at it, as you mentioned. But apart from the pressures, and some of them are, you know, Aziz Sab has mentioned, you know, the parents' expectations can be silly, you know, in some cases, like, you know, wanting a light-skinned person, you know, these kind of things. But then there's reconciling that with the external pressures.